The Board of Education will now conduct a closed session pursuant to KRS 61.8101K, KRS 61.8101E, and KRS 61.8101C of the Kentucky Open Meetings Act and KRS 156.5576C for the purpose of preliminary informative discussions regarding the 2021 evaluation of the superintendent, discussions relating to the collective bargaining negotiations, and discussions relating to pending litigation. At this time, is there a motion, please? Board Member Craig, is there a second, please? Ms. Duncan, thank you. All those in favor, would you raise your hand? So it is unanimous. Everyone is in favor, and Ms. McIntosh is not able to join us at this time. And I will say that again when we start the next meeting so everybody's clear. So we will go upstairs, please. Thank you. I apologize for the delay, but we are now ready to get started with our business portion of the meeting. The Board of Education met in executive session for preliminary informative discussions regarding the 2020-2021 evaluation of the superintendent, discussions relating to collective bargaining negotiations, and discussions relating to pending litigation pursuant to KRS 61.8101K, KRS 61.8101E, and KRS 61.8101C of the Kentucky Open Meetings Act and KRS 156.5576C. No action was taken in the closed session. At this time, public discussion of the litigation matter and identification of the specific matter would disclose litigation strategy and have an adverse impact upon the legal and financial interest of the district. I will now entertain a motion to authorize board counsel to effectuate a statement in the manner identified in a closed session and pursuant to the terms discussed in the closed session. We're gonna do it later.
Yes.
Later.
No, you can call for the vote now for that. And it was to effectuate a settlement.
Is that, oh, okay. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is there a motion for the settlement, please?
Craig moves.
Board Member Craig, seconded by
Scholl.
Dr. Scholl. Thank you. All those in favor, would you raise your hand? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Now, is there a motion to adjourn from the executive session so we can start the business session, please? There's a motion. Board Member Craig, seconded by Board Member Duncan. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. So now we will move on. Before I start with the opening statement, Board Member McIntosh is not able to be with us this evening, but she is with us, but she's not visibly with us tonight. So please excuse her for not being here. She told me she's posted on social media why she's not here. She has a family commitment this evening. So I'd like to welcome you to the May 25th meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education. At this time, I would ask that we take 10 seconds for a moment of silence. There is a lot for us to be mindful of. So if we could take 10 seconds, please, for a moment of silence. Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Polio.
Yes, ma'am. I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sir. Dr. Chris, would you read our vision statement for us tonight,
I
please?
sure will. All Jefferson County Public School students graduate prepared, empowered, and inspired to reach their full potential and contribute as thoughtful, responsible citizens of our diverse, shared world.
Thank you very much. The next order of business is a recognition of and presentation from the Jefferson County Public Schools Superintendent Student Advisory Council. I would like to introduce Renee Murphy, who will introduce this part of the agenda.
Oh, you want me to do it? I'll do it. Thank you, Chair Porter. We had this year, obviously, Student Advisory Council was a little bit different this year as it was to end last year. And so we gathered a group together, gave them a challenge and had them work on it through the year. Had multiple times where I met with them, got feedback on this and other issues around JCPS. Wonderful group of young people, students that represent our JCPS high schools. And so my man, Luke Lush is, I want to bring him up. I don't know if you're the first up, Luke, but I'm going to have you kick it off for us, and then you can kick it to whoever you all plan to start the presentation. But thank you for your work.
Thank you, Dr. Polio. As Dr. Polio said, there are 4 of us here representing the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, and we have prepared a presentation for you guys on a plan we have for student representation on the school board. And with that said, I will kick it off to Sophie.
Good evening. We are here today to present our work on the representation of students on our school board. Before we get started, we would like to thank you both for your time and consideration of our plan.
Good evening. My name is Rowan McCollum, and I'm a junior at Eastern High School.
Hi, my name is Patricia Minarakiza. I'm a sophomore at Southern High School.
My name is Luke Lush, and I am a junior representing the Academy at Shawnee.
My name is Sophie Garrity. I'm a junior at Seneca High School. And we are the students representing the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council. The council represents students from each high school in JCPS. Our mission is to improve JCPS by communicating ideas and feedback to Dr. Polio and other administrators. As a whole, we believe that using our voices is vital for improvement and equity. To know how to approach an issue, you should go directly to the source. This is why we should add student voices to JCPS's school board. We feel strongly that student representation and voice can lead to improvement in our schools throughout the district.
With the vitality of student voice in mind, especially so in the decision-making of our school district, the SSAC feels that the addition of student representation will greatly improve our school district. And throughout our discussions, we formed the goal of including student representation on our school board. Throughout our communications with other school districts, we have found that student representation is common and effective in the districts we've reached out to. Larry Hammond, the superintendent of Gallatin County Schools, says, "The student perspective keeps board members in touch with the current issues or concerns that may otherwise not be shared. However, JCPS is much larger than the other districts in our state. So how do we make sure that every student voice is heard?"
To answer this question, we began to brainstorm different ways to represent all JCPS districts. Through our discussions and research as a group, we wove different facets into our plan to ensure both equity and equal representation is shown by the students that we choose to represent JCPS. We focus on equal representation through the selection of 7 total students, 1 from each region of JCPS, to rotate onto our school board meetings. And in addition, to ensure that these 7 students represent not only their school, but the entirety of their region, they will also be assigned a role on the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, which is a group, as before mentioned, that represents every single high school in the district. These procedures will ensure that students representing JCPS can hear feedback from representatives of all schools and regions of the district, preparing them to most effectively represent the JCPS student body. In regards to equity, we devised an application-based selection process, wherein our emphasis is not put on grades or test scores, but rather on our applicant's character, which removes an academic barrier and provides a more well-rounded representation of JCPS. This selection process will be provided by individual school administrators rather than a single district application, giving each school the opportunity to distribute applications in the most equitable manner possible. Once we deliberated these points, we began to devise our official plan of action and policy. After brainstorming these various topics and ideas, we began the process of forming our official plan. In doing so, we wanted to allow each student on the SSAC to submit their version of an ideal plan. And by doing so, we created an atmosphere where every single high school had input and a voice in how they would like to see JCPS represented through our students. Once these individual plans were submitted, the SSAC deliberated on the different aspects of each. And after doing so, we voted on our favorite points and devised a composite plan that could meet the needs of as many schools and as many students as possible. Once our plan was revised, we collaborated with administrators, such as Mr. Jonathan Lowe, to begin to form an official policy draft. And once this draft was formed, it went through many revisions to ensure accurate representation. With this policy developed, we prepared to present our work to the JCPS Policy Committee.
After our plan was revised and our policy developed, myself and Sebastian Sanchez presented our plan to the JCPS Policy Committee and received both feedback and improvements and some potential concerns on the implementation of our policy. For example, late meetings and time management were a concern. Although the content that is deliberated late may not necessarily be relevant to students, and as a result, students' representatives do not need to stay for every section of the meeting. Attendance was also a concern. However, the application process by which students were selected should produce quality candidates and somewhat mitigate this issue. And in addition, the rotating nature of the students attending the board meetings will also allow for substitution if necessary. One major concern was accurate representation of every school in the district. Our plan removes this concern, as every student that attends board meetings also procures a spot on the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council and reports back to them. And within this council, every high school student in the district is represented, ensuring that all schools will have an input into the students representing them. Throughout our process, the ideas of equal representation, equity, and accountability were present, and our group as a whole both grew and learned from this endeavor. We worked with administrators and peers to compromise to a policy that will lead to our final product.
With all that has been said in mind, we are now looking forward to implementing our steps. We would like to hear from your feedback, opinions, and concerns in the spirit of improving our plan.
We greatly thank you for the opportunity to present our work this evening, and we greatly appreciate both your time and your consideration. As a group, we're very excited about the prospect of student voice being heard throughout JCPS and humbly ask for both your concerns and feedback, as well as their support in moving forward. Before we conclude our presentation, are there any questions? Feel free to call upon any student representatives for specific information. Thank you.
And I'll wrap up. I wanted to thank all of these students. Every single time I got on there, the attendance was high. They were engaged, working hard on this. I want to thank Jonathan Lowe and Julie Barrett for their work with this team and helping lead them. You all did fantastic work. So really proud of all the work that you all did. Next year, as I've told them, our Student Advisory Council is going to be working with our future state teams. And so giving student feedback clearly on all the work we're doing moving forward. So we look forward to that work. But thanks again, students. You all did a wonderful job being leaders in this district. We're proud of you.
Thank you, Dr. Polio, and thank you to the students for being here tonight, and those that we're not virtually looking at on the screen, but for the work that you have done, and look forward to more conversations with you. I did get to see your presentation for the policy committee. So good job then. Good job now. Thank you very much. And very briefly, if there's a board member that wants to tell them how great they are, you've got a couple of minutes to tell them how great they are. If you can't say how great they are, you don't get to talk. So who wants to compliment our advisory committee? Mr. Craig, I'll start with you first.
You're all great. You're all wonderful. as
Okay,
Chair
good
Porter
job.
says. Thank you all for your work. We've talked about this idea previously, and I think adding student voice to the work that we do here would be could be a really valuable step for the board and our thought process. So I look forward to having further discussions with my colleagues about the work that you've done. Thank you.
Dr. Chris?
Thank you. I'm really impressed by the thought and intentionality you put into trying to do your best to ensure that whoever was possibly here with the board was truly representing all students. I think you did a great job thinking through that process, and it's one of the more impressive parts of the plan. And as Mr. Craig said, I think it has great promise, and I look forward to discussing it more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Shule?
I just want to go on record by complimenting you for a job well done. You all are brilliant, and I look forward to possibly meeting you all in person one day and working to see this plan come to full flower here in JCPS. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Duncan?
Well, I would just add on to what they're saying. Thank you for the thought that you put into this and the time that you have devoted to serving the district in this way, and look forward to more discussions. Thank you.
Board Member Marshall?
Thank you, Chair Porter, and thank you, students, for this amazing work. As a teacher, I know if you are a student and you are actively asking to do more work, then I say congratulations for that. And I'll be happy to give you all the work that you want. So I really appreciate your dedication to this. Continue being a shining light in all of your schools, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you very much, and thank you. Look forward to seeing you again, and keep up the good work. Thank you. We will now move on with the recommendation for the approval of the meeting agenda this evening. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda, please?
Craig moves.
Seconded. Board Member Craig made the motion, is seconded by Board Member Marshall. Thank you. All those in favor, would you indicate by raising your hand? Okay, thank you. It's unanimous. I'm not calling the roll in the interest of time, so thank you very much. The next item is the recommendation for the approval of minutes of the previous meetings. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the May 4th and May the 11th meeting? Is there a motion, please?
Marshall.
Board Member Marshall, seconded by Dr. Chris. Thank you. All those in favor, would you please indicate by raising your hand? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure at this time to introduce for the superintendent's report, our superintendent, Dr. Marty Polio. Dr. Polio.
Thank you, Chair Porter and board members, and I bring you the superintendent report for May 25th. And as you know, we're down to our final 2 days. So our A group finished up today. They are now a lot of celebrations, I think, at the end of school today. And our B group will end up on Thursday. We'll finish with great high school graduation ceremonies on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I wanted to take this opportunity to celebrate some of the few important things, accomplishments that has happened with the JCPS family in the past 2 weeks and moving forward, because I think it's a great time to celebrate. We know it's been a long, challenging year. I think we've set the record for the most amount of people watching board meetings in the history of this district. And it's been difficult and challenging, but I'm proud of the work. And so, first of all, I'd like to recognize the 28 educators who just finished the Louisville Teacher Residency Program last night. That was because of your investment that we have now turned to growing our own, so to speak, and having 28 future teachers that within 1 year were able to work inside of a classroom with a mentor teacher and get their master's degree and their teacher certification. 21 of those are teachers of color. So we are very proud that we have worked on this for 2 years, and now we are starting to see the fruits of that labor. Last night, we recognized them. We gave them a tassel for their graduation. Each of the candidates, all 28, signed a conditional contract with JCPS, and they will have their own classroom in August. And this is the type of program we have to do to make sure that we continue on to grow our own and make sure that we reach our goals when it comes to hiring, and especially diversity hiring. And so on Wednesday, tomorrow night, we're actually welcoming the new class of Louisville Teacher Residency Program. So this is working. It was awesome to see these young people getting this teacher certification and live their dream to become a teacher. I'd also like to recognize all the students and staff that participated in Justice Fest on Saturday. I hope you got to see some of that. Really inspirational day that included pitches from JCPS students who led teams on how to create justice within our community in many different areas. I want to recognize the two teachers of the year in the state in previous years, Matt Kaufman and Nyree Clayton Taylor, who have led this work all year. And it's going to continue to grow, become an annual event in JCPS. And this is the type of learning we want our students to have, those backpack worthy type experiences that is authentic learning. I also want to thank Kentucky Derby Festival, Humana, Churchill Downs, and Kindred Healthcare for their sponsorship of this program. Also, I wanted to recognize, I've been talking for several months about the concept of lighthouse leaders. That comes from the work of Steve Pemberton, a speaker I listen to often. But to celebrate all of the incredible educators in JCPS, we asked our schools to nominate lighthouse leaders for an award. We got over 150 nominations. We wanted people who have gone above and beyond what the call of their job is to support kids this year. And it has been awesome. We got over 150 nominations. And I think people that read those nominations were tearing up consistently through them. And I've been inside schools now handing out these awards. We've given out 4 this week. And I just wanted to recognize those. Pat Sanford, some call Mr. Pat, others call Grandpa. This was a instructional assistant, EC instructional assistant at Conway Middle School, who just goes above and beyond and does whatever he possibly can for the staff and the students. He's gone back to do this as a retired ECE assistant and was just amazing how much the staff and students loved him. Brian Heil, the plant operator at Johnsontown Road Elementary School, who speaks to every student and every teacher as they start today to make sure they have what they need. Tila Scrub, an 8th grade counselor we gave today at TJ Middle School, who just was available on weekends and nights for students to make sure her 8th graders got to the schools they wanted to go to and met the deadlines. Just absolutely inspirational to see the amount of students and staff who came down to celebrate her. And then finally, Carla Wright, our Frisky at Breck Metro High School today we gave away, had the entire school of Breck Metro and all the staff members in the gymatorium there to make sure that we celebrated the work of Carla, who would go to houses throughout the pandemic to make sure kids had what they needed. So it's just inspirational to see that. We're giving out 2 more tomorrow. I'm not going to tell you who those are because we keep that a surprise until I walk in the door with this award, which they all seem to break out in tears as soon as they see me. So it's an awesome experience. Also wanted to recognize the 4 winners of our scholarship fund. Our employees donated over $50,000 to 4 deserving members of the class of 2021. And their stories of achievement and resiliency is just incredible. So I just wanted to recognize them. Shayla Cuesta from Central, $5,600. Yasim Diop from DuPont Manual, $6,000. Leanne Rivera, Marion C. Moore, $14,400. And the big winner of the day was Jordan Haskins from Wagner, who is going to come back to JCPS and be a math teacher at Wagner High School to make his mom proud, $22,000. So I just want to really thank all of the employees that have donated to this. It's making a difference in our students' lives. I also want to thank our community partners and everyone on this team that's worked on summer learning program. We're going to kick that off. There's going to be summer learning program. We're going to have thousands of kids. We've already had over 5,000 students sign up for summer learning. And this is the type the work we're going to have to do to be very intentional. I got to recognize one student, my main man, Zeke, from John F. Kennedy Montessori. So just to tell you that story, I visited Kennedy Montessori the first week of elementary school. And I went into Zeke's classroom. And Zeke had just finished lunch and wasn't happy with the selection or choice of what he had at lunch and said he wished we would have Chick-fil-A for him. And sitting on his desk was the Leader in Me book. And I said, if you read that entire book, I will bring back Chick-fil-A for the entire class. He said there's no way he could read a book with 310 pages. That would be crazy. So his classmates and everyone pushed him and said, you can do it. Checked in on him a couple times. Principal checked in on him. Got a call last week that said Zeke had done what he needed to do. He had read 310 pages of The Leader in Me. I went in and quizzed him to make sure that he had truly read it. But it was awesome to see how proud he was of himself for reading that and for being able to be kind to bring Chick-fil-A to all of his peers in his classroom. So congratulations, Zeke. We're really proud of you. And finally, I want to thank everyone in the JCPS family for their hard work this year, this dedication, the support, the commitment during the 2020-2021 school years. Everyone knows the challenges we faced and have overcome, and that's just been a monumental task. But I have been inspired by passion and energy and commitment of the JCPS educators, what they've brought to us this year, which is just a resiliency, a passion, support for our kids like I've never seen before. I wish everyone could see exactly what I see every day out of the staff at JCPS. And I'm even more convinced after this year that we have the best team of educators and support staff of any district in the nation. Finally, congratulations to the nearly 6,000 seniors that will be graduating on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from JCPS. I know they've been up through a lot over the past couple of years, and I just can't wait to get out and celebrate with you. So great job, class of 2021. Thank you, Chair Porter.
Thank you, Dr. Polio. I will next read a statement about persons currently not addressing the board. Due to the reduction in meeting room capacity due to COVID social distancing requirements and recognizing many members of our community are not yet ready to attend in-person public meetings, we are deferring in-person comments to the board until such time as we can again have full capacity in this or other public spaces. During the interim, we will continue to accept public comments via email. Emails sent for this purpose are provided to each board member and are included as a part of the minutes of this and future meetings. So having said that, we will move on to our action items this evening. And we have, I think it's 2 action items, starting with the first action item has to do with the student support and behavior intervention handbook revisions. Dr. Polio, if you'd like to introduce that to us, please.
Thank you, Chair Porter and board members. As you know, we have now, this is the 3rd consecutive board meeting where we have had this as either an information item or an action item tonight. So we will be brief in our presentation of the SSBIH and changes as we've talked about them, I believe, at 2 meetings now. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Coleman and Mr. Moore, who will guide us through this.
All right, so we just want to say thank you again for considering the work of the handbook committee. Doctors DeFerrari and Anderson did an outstanding job leading this work, including more stakeholder voices than ever before, despite our virtual context. We especially appreciate that they gave students the opportunity to provide input, and that input was invaluable. So as you know, Chief Moore and I are here together because the handbook comes to life with both of us. So, you know, as you know, that we create the handbook and then Chief Moore's team is responsible for the implementation.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. And I'm here to reaffirm that the assistant supes, the executive administrators and I are here to make sure that the student handbook is fully implemented. We stand firm in our commitment to its implementation, and we're here for the second reading with Drs. DeFerrari and Dr. Anderson is going to give you the second reading. So thank you.
Okay, good evening. Great to see everyone here this evening. First, I want to begin with just a huge triple, quadruple thank you. This is kind of the way I've started every presentation, and we really did have more participation than really we have in the 6 or so years that I've been helping facilitate this process. And I think we forget sometimes that, you know, the work of this committee is to carry out recommendations for you that are research-based, partially things that you want us to look into and partially things that we know are things that need adjusting based on vision of the district. I want to affirm again, oh my gosh, our students didn't miss a beat. Both of the representatives were there every time. Their participation was really appreciated. We had tons of parents that had opportunities and took them, that I know Crystal Hawkins facilitated in the community. Again, Suzanne Wright worked with our community stakeholders that may not be parents, but are people that are very worried and concerned and caring about the success of our kids. And then finally, district stakeholders, people that are practitioners and carry out the work of the handbook, but also service to our kids throughout the year. So again, thanks very much for that. Moving forward, our work is not finished. Kind of normally, this would be kind of the end of the work, but because we know there are some big projects that need to be done, we're going to be moving forward and doing some work over the summer and into next year to really make sure we get this as right as we possibly can, and also engage relevant stakeholders in that process. And also team members in Jefferson County, like even communications that we know can help us grow, even folks from Dr. Belger's team that we know can help us. So we'll be doing that. I'm not going to read the topics. You've seen them before and you have them. We have introduced dates and we've begun inviting facilitators for those groups. So you can see we're going to get kicked off and we're very excited about that work. I will say after the kickoff, know that those groups will have the autonomy to change meeting dates and times that worked for them, obviously, as they start to participate and work together in collaboration. But we're going to provide those as a way for them to kind of have some guidance. And then finally, on the horizon, Dr. Polio has charged me and Dr. Anderson with working on an alternatives to suspension task force. That task force will be pretty sizable and involve lots of practitioners that have to interact with behaviors and student trauma and those things every day. That will begin with a pretty in-depth research review, just so everyone can kind of be on the same page. We're excited about that. Again, he just approved kind of the concept map on that, and we'll be starting again to tap and have conversations with assistant superintendents and Robert Moore about representation. Obviously, we'll be reaching out to the union and DEP and lots of different partners. So stay tuned for that work. I know that you'll be getting updates on that. And we know that it's just going to offer more support to our administrators in ways that we can not only support students, but keep them safe, keep all students safe, while also shifting towards more proportional outcomes for our students.
Yes, and with this second reading, we also have completed the REAP process with DEP. Equity has been at the forefront of this process, as we've mentioned in the past, when we've come to speak to you about this topic. We began by reviewing the previous REAP from the last handbook revision and used that to kind of set the foundation and for the work moving forward on this one. DEP was also significantly involved throughout the revision process and a part of our committee work leading up to what we provided to you today in the form of the final REAP. That was completed on May 6th. And we did that a little bit differently in that we included a stakeholder from each of our committee members to be a part of that process and walk through the process. That was led by DEP. And so we're appreciative of their work as well. That was specifically was BJ Bunton and Taylor Utley. They led our stakeholder committee through that process. And the feedback was good, and it aligned pretty well with our on the horizon work. So we're excited about that and the feedback we got from that process. I just want to share with you one more time just the documents that you have at your disposal to review related to these revisions. The REAP that I've just discussed, you have available to you. We provided to you an overview of the SSBIH. That includes the process, all of those things. And then the actual changes are shown in two different documents. One is an actual draft of the handbook. Every change in there is highlighted in yellow. If there is a removal of text, that text would be highlighted in yellow as well, but the text would be red and have strike throughs. And then if we've added anything, again, it would be highlighted in yellow but you would see green text to show an addition. The other thing that we provided to you was an itemized list of those recommendations that is literally just a step-by-step overview of the revisions. As we wrap up, there's a couple things I always like to remind board members, and that is one, we still send this to materials and production. We're very grateful for their work. They make the document look pretty and accessible and clean things up a lot. That includes editing and addressing any grammatical errors that have kind of shown up through the revision process. And then also this year, we're excited to let you guys know that we're looking forward to translating this year's handbook into 10 different languages, which is a first for us. That will be available for our students in both print and electronically. So we're excited about that. As soon as materials and production is finished with their work, then we work with our translation services to get those documents lined up and ready to go. So with that, we'll open it up for questions and comments, if you have any.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I think what we will do is, first of all, call for the motion to support this, and then with the discussion, we will go with the questions and I'm doing that because we have had an information session where we put our concerns on the table. So board members, you are allowed to ask questions, but I think the first thing we will do is ask for the motion to receive and approve the student support and behavior handbook. And after that motion, then we will have a second and then discussion before we call for the vote, if that's okay. So is there, Dr. Schul makes the motion, seconded by
Marshall.
Board Member Marshall. Okay, at this time, are there any questions from the board, please? Questions, Ms. Duncan?
I have a question again. The language is troubling to me. And, you know, I asked several questions along the way and I had so much trouble. The answers that I received were not helpful to me. But I had trouble with when we talk about race-conscious interventions to reduce disproportionate outcomes. Are we saying that we are going to treat races differently? Because that's what it sounds like.
When we refer to race-conscious supports and interventions, what we're trying to ensure is that people are considering differences, bias, and other types of things that might impact the way they handle a decision differently based on the faces that they're looking at. So there's many ways that can manifest. And yes, what we're saying is what is appropriate in that context with that student and also in line with the handbook that we hope that you approve this evening.
Can I go ahead with my comments?
Yes, ma'am, we've got the timer on. Go ahead.
Okay. I just had three little things that were troubling to me. And one of them was, I've asked several times for data on restorative practice. We're getting ready to put $2.8 million more into restorative practice. And I want to see where restorative practice reduces recidivism, reduces that repeat offense. And I've asked it, and I don't know if it's out there or not, but I've not seen it. So before I put $2.8 million in there, I'd like to know if it's reducing what these offenses that are being subjected to review and handled through restorative practice. Restorative practice is a very individualized approach. I've been to sessions on this that talk about trying to treat each situation individually so that you kind of really put the handbook aside and say, look for the causes of what the person did and how you can move through that. The only problem, my fear with that is that then we're becoming consistent in our responses. And school to school, administrator to administrator, we become inconsistent. So I've always had a kind of a hesitation in that. And, that's my concern about continuing to invest in this program. Please show me where it is reducing repeat offenses. by the same offenders. And then the other thing that I have concerns about is the no suspension for K through third grade. We talk about in cases of law violations, there might ultimately be a suspension involved if it's a law violation. But sometimes we have egregious offenses that maybe aren't law offenses. And what we're doing when we don't use suspension as an option is we're taking parent intervention completely out. There is no parent intervention in this. It's just, okay, we're going to handle it all at school. And if we handle it all in school, I haven't seen any assurances that the schools are going to have the resources to deal with the offenses that do happen, because they will still happen. We might say, okay, we're not going to suspend for them, but the offenses will still happen. And how do we separate? Do we have facilities to separate and counsel? I didn't see, and I've asked about this, but I really have not felt that I had a full answer on this. I've talked with some non-Title I school principals who are saying they don't have the funding for this kind of treatment for the for facilities to handle this, or counselors for this. So, I'm just, I appreciate all the work, but I had concerns and I've asked my questions along the way, and I've just not felt comfortable with the responses. So I probably will not support these changes, but everybody else, that's fine. I mean, that's just me. Right.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. And I just wanted to say a couple of things. I understand, the concerns that are out there. First off, I want to say this as a board and as a district, and we've said this a lot. I've said it tonight multiple times. We're going to have to do things differently. And this is not just, and I know this is not just the JCPS administration saying that we need to have different data when it comes to disciplinary outcomes. This is the federal government telling us our funding is at danger if we don't do this right now. And so everyone in JCPS needs to know that 80 million in IDEA funding, is that approximately the funding from the federal side, that becomes in jeopardy if we don't do things differently. That's number one. And our corrective action plan when it comes to the state caps around IDEA. These are mandatory things we are going to have to do to look at things differently. And that's why I've challenged Dr. DeFerrari to run a team, a committee that will really look at alternatives to suspension. Secondly, I'm going to say this, I think we are very behind in this move when it comes to pre-K through 3. Most large districts in America went to that a long time ago. We are very behind on that. There is no doubt about that. And one thing I would agree that the behavior violations that a student that is 4, 5, 6, or 7 years old, I don't think that one day of suspension provides recidivism either from them coming back and doing it again. So, I'm going to say these are tough issues to tackle. I was a principal for 10 years, and there was tough issues around student discipline. But we are at a time that we are going to have to look at things differently, or the consequences to the district will be pretty dire for us. So I think this is a step that we have to consider, more importantly for student supports, especially our youngest students.
Does that complete, Ms. Duncan? You've got a few.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions and comments from board members? Okay, hearing none, I will call for the vote at this time. All those in favor of moving forward with the Student Support and Behavior Intervention Handbook and the Student Bill of Rights, would you please indicate by raising your hand, please? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, we have a vote of 5-1. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and we look forward to more conversations and all that you do. I will say again that we have a lot to do with our students come back to us, and I would hope that we would embrace them first and figure out and talk with them and let them know that we care. That's not on the script and it's not in the handbook, but that's just my personal opinion. So thank you for your work and for everyone that has worked with you. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the recommendation for approval of the tentative budget for the fiscal year 2021-22. Dr. Polio.
Thank you, Chair Porter and board members. Tonight, we are, as you know, 2 weeks ago, we did a presentation on the tentative budget. So much of this is what you've already heard. We have added a few things at the request of some board members that we wanted you to be able to see, namely how our financial outlook from especially state or federal government has changed in the past 10 years, specifically with SEEK and some other grant allocations that we want to make sure that you know about. We're going to provide the tentative budget. And then finally, we are going to tee up a little bit the ESSER funds, the stimulus funding. I will be requesting to our board chair and our vice chair that at our next board meeting, we do a significant information session on stimulus funding, get your feedback and input. We're going to talk about process during that time as well. So that would be for our next board meeting, but we are going to tee up a little bit some of those stimulus funds and our plans for that. So I'll turn it over to Chief Financial Officer Cordelia Harden.
Thank you, Dr. Polio. As Dr. Polio mentioned, tonight we're asking for your approval on the tentative budget that we presented in the work session last board meeting. As I mentioned then, our total budget is $1.6 billion. In the tentative budget, the general fund is approximately 1.4 billion of that total, which is 83% of the total tentative budget. Our local community provides approximately 76% of our general fund. The state provides 23%, with the majority being through SEEK. SEEK over the years has not been adjusted to consider the impact of inflation on the SEEK per pupil. So what we present here is the Consumer Price Index as it measures the average change of prices over time. These changes in the index provides us with the inflation rates that we use in our calculations to see what impact inflation has actually had. So to see the overall impact of inflation rates over time, we compare the actual dollars versus actual inflation dollars. This graph reflects the impact inflation has had over time. In 2008, the base SEEK per pupil was $3,866. In today's dollar, that is equal to $4,736. You can see by comparing the actual line, which is the green line on the bottom, to the gold, which is the one that has been adjusted for inflation per pupil. The gold line reflects actually the real decrease in the value of the SEEK per pupil due to inflation versus the actual dollars we have received, which gives us the impression, because it has increased, it gives us the impression that our per pupil has increased, where in reality, because of inflation, you can see that the SEEK per pupil has decreased. There are also other areas of state support that have actually reduced over time. And we've also shown here some of our preliminary average per pupil for FY20 that includes all expenditures, and it was approximately $18,117. However, if we exclude the state paid employee benefits, that actual per pupil expense reduces to $14,283. So in the fiscal year 2007-08, we received $37 million in state grants. For 2019-20, these same grants total $29.6 million. And these numbers have not been adjusted for inflation for those years. Textbooks and professional development are no longer funded at all by the state. However, they're essential in preparing students for their needs of their instructional needs. The ECE program within JCPS is funded by local taxes, state SEEK, and federal IDEA grants. The federal government has a full funding target of 40% of the program cost. 40% of our cost is $54 million. Our actual federal support is $23 million, or 17% of federal support, which is resulting in a $31 million underfunding of the federal targeted rate.
Cordelia, could I interrupt you just briefly? I just wanted to, from our discussion earlier about a $25 million deficit, I think these slides show a lot of the reasoning too behind that, as we have kept the same services, and just in state grants alone, we have $7.5 million less in state grant funding. Yet we have continued to fund all of these things at nearly the same level along with ECE. So I just wanted to, as that continues into the future, that shortfall will also continue to grow.
State agency programs is another area that is underfunded by the state, with an average per pupil cost of $22,706. The state average support is $9,635 per pupil. There is an underfunding of the educational cost on average of $6,545 for the state agency program.
And I just wanted to add to that once again, that is our service we are providing to districts all around the state who send their children to our state agency schools, which, you know, we also have students in state agency schools. And so as child abuse in Kentucky has grown, so has the desire for children who need state agency schools. But as you can see, our budget pays for a great deal of that. So that is going to children from outside of Jefferson County who are coming into our state agency schools.
Our next steps this evening is to provide you a high-level overview of the ESSER and to request approval of the tentative budget. In August and September, we will bring forward to you the review and the request for approval of the working budget. We have presented previously comparative information on the various ESSER funds. You've seen this slide before. We will be updating it, as Dr. Polio referenced, in the June 8th board meeting. In addition, on June 8th, we will discuss in greater depth our recommendations on preparing a spending plan for the ARP ESSER 3 funding allocation. The plan requires a systematic long-term planning and stakeholder input. Stakeholders include our teachers, our parents, students, community members, and our support staff. The Council of Great City Schools has provided us with a draft document to assist districts in developing the framework to be considering how to ensure these federal dollars are used strategically and effectively. And we are in the process now of reviewing that document, and we will use that framework to help present what we will bring forward to you on June 8th.
And if I could add, I just wanted to add a little bit on ESSER because we will have some development before our next board meeting. I said it last meeting, but I want you all to be aware of this as well and to be transparent about it. So essentially, we are working through the concept of 3 different buckets for ESSER funds. Bucket 1 was what was needed to implement in-person school, the technology that was needed for virtual, the hotspots, the Chromebooks, the PPE, everything that was needed immediately to implement the 2020-2021 school year. And we will give you a report specifically on what that number was. Bucket number 2 is what I wanted to highlight for you. So what we want to do is get, and I told you this last time, we will be announcing to schools the grants we will be providing to every single school. Our schools have very innovative ideas that they want to implement on the ground to provide extra services for students right now as we begin, whether that's technology, summer programming, but they just have after-school programming next year. This will be over 3 years. We are basing that formula on several different factors. First of all, each school will get approximately $150 per student. Then we will factor in from there schools that have high free and reduced lunch. That's a factor that increases that amount. Schools that have high percentage of students of color would increase that amount. Special education students and English language learner students, and then high mobility. So all of those factors will go in for a per pupil per student. So clearly we will fund schools with the highest need, with the highest amount of dollars, but every school will receive a significant amount of ESSER funding that we will bring to you at the next board meeting. They will have that number by the end of the week, and they can begin implementing these programs immediately. So I think our schools are going to be pleased with what they can do and be innovative in that process, and that's bucket number 2. And then obviously bucket number 3 is really the bulk of the funding, which we will be working with you all on at the next meeting to develop the plan of how we are going to, that is more systemic, breaking down the digital divide for all of our students, providing student support centers to our students most in need, making sure that we have the employees that we need to continue moving forward over the next several years. So bucket number 3 is that systemic work that we will be working with you on, and we will bring you that plan at the next board meeting. I just kind of wanted to tee that up because schools will be receiving their allocation by the end of the week. Anything else, Cordelia? So that concludes our presentation. Happy to take any questions or comments that you have.
Again, this is a second time we've had an opportunity to bring the questions forward. And the last time I asked for the motion in the second, and I don't have to do that. So this time we will have limited questions from board members for clarification of the information that has been presented this evening, if that's okay. And then I will call for the motion and the second and the vote. But this, again, we have had this presentation before. We asked for some clarity on things. I would like to know, Dr. Polio, as you talk about sending information to the schools at the end of the week, is it possible for the board to get a list of what the funding looks like for the individual schools and not wait? I mean, I know we're going to discuss it more at our next board meeting, but that's a limited amount. I mean.
Yes, ma'am. I think we can have that by tomorrow, can't we?
Yes,
We can get that to you tomorrow, and we'll probably send it out to them on Friday.
Okay, that's Friday's fine. Thank you very much. Questions from the board members? Ms. Duncan? And we are going to put the timer on because we want to be time efficient, please. So. Ms.
Well, I
Duncan.
don't have a question. I just have a comment. I just want to say that I'm afraid this budget doesn't make me feel better about keeping our kids safe in our schools. What we've added 5 security monitors and 1 security officer. And we have seen a proliferation of guns in this community as reported over, 3-part article on the proliferation of guns. Very concerned about this. I went to a church picnic Sunday and it was a large crowd, and we had an armed officer who was eating hot dogs and walking around and visiting with everybody. But it made me feel very much better in case there was an armed attempt. So I think we have to be planned on this. And I don't see anything in this budget that makes me feel that we are planning for this kind of potential threat. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Duncan. Other questions or comments from board members? Dr. Chris?
I had a question. Well, first, I just want to reiterate a few of the things that are highlighted in the budget and that you mentioned tonight. So Really just, I came on the board beginning of 2017. So just since I've been on the board, we've seen homeless student number go way up, number of English learners go way up, the amount of community violence and trauma go way up. Almost 70% of our students are low income, 1/8 are ECE. But state funding, just since I've been on the board, has decreased, and inflation adjusted dollars has decreased $60 million. So we're seeing more and more need and less funding to do it. So, I guess I'd like to issue a challenge to our state legislators next legislative session to put your actual money where your proverbial mouth is. And if you do care about these students that we're trying very hard to educate, and including students from all over the state that we serve in our state agency schools that are woefully underfunded by the state, then please step up and meet your constitutional obligation to do so. Two quick questions. One, I wanted to clarify on, and you don't have to flip to it, on page 31 of the budget, where it talks about the nature of the SEEK formula, that the taxpayers of Jefferson County are being asked to pick up greater and greater portions of the responsibility of supporting preschool through 12th grade education. I just want to clarify, that's throughout the whole state, right, that we're talking about, because Jefferson County dollars flow out to other parts of the state through the SEEK formula. Is that correct?
That is correct, because of that local effort, which has to do with the assessments of the property in Jefferson County. Now, that formula is the same throughout. However, in Jefferson County, we are what's considered a property rich, according to the formula. And therefore, in the sense, the state allocates a certain amount for SEEK. And because of our property assessments, our portion does go out, yes.
Thank you. And regarding state agency schools, I mean, I would never want to, be so callous and cruel as to refuse services to non-JCPS students who need those services that come from other parts of the state. But, have we, had that conversation with state legislators about, we're serving students all over the state, and yet, we're taking a pretty significant financial hit by taking kids from outside of JCPS, and is that something that we can?
I think I've had some conversations. I can't say they've been real targeted as what
Yeah.
the answer would be, but there is no doubt that our state agency schools are incredible. They provide great services. I've enjoyed all of my visits to the state agency schools. They're very much needed. But, I'll say this, either one of two things: that we need to be fully funded for them, or they become a part of like the Kentucky School for the Blind or Deaf, which is a part of the Kentucky Department of Education. But
Yeah.
we're happy to take it. We just believe they should be fully funded.
Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the tentative budget for the fiscal year 2021, 2022? Board Member Craig makes the motion, and it's seconded by Dr. Schul. Thank you very much. All those in favor of this motion, would you please indicate by raising your hand? All those opposed? Okay, we have a 5-1 vote. Thank you. The motion carries. Thank you very much. We next will move to an information item that does not require a vote this evening, but it's for our information. And this has to do with discussion about the work with the Council of Great City Schools and our school board and our superintendent. So Dr. Polio, if you would like to introduce this, please, and invite our guests to speak.
Yes, thank you. Chair Porter and I and Dr. Kolb had discussed often about essentially professional development that we've always wanted to do with board members, and obviously COVID has gotten in the way. But the Council of the Great City Schools provides a fantastic service for us and gives us an opportunity to make sure that we can move forward. So I appreciate that. Our guest from the Council of Great City, is he with us?
Yes, he's on there, AJ.
Thank you, AJ. If you could welcome you to, and wanted you to describe your work to the board and what we'll be doing moving forward, and then give them opportunity to ask you any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and a pleasure to be with you. I'm joined this evening by Cindy Ellsburn, who is also a governance coach with the council. A lot of our work is when school boards and superintendents invite us in, is to simply help identify where the areas that the board wants to improve, and then try to build a team of school board members from across the country who can support the board and the governance team in improving in those areas. Much of the time, this begins with us doing one-on-one visits with each of the board members and the superintendent to get a sense of what your needs are and the direction of growth that you all are interested in, and then designing a implementation plan from there. I could say more, but it's probably more useful to hear from you all, whatever questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for being here this evening. I would like to thank also the Council of Great City Schools. During this pandemic, we have had a meeting every Friday with board chairs from all the council, and it has been very informative and helpful to listen and learn and to share, and to also have the opportunity to support each other as we have worked through this. So I would officially like for that to be recorded, that we are thanking the Council of Great City Schools for that work. So at this time, are there questions or comments from the board for Mr. AJ while he's here this evening? Questions or comments? Dr. Chris?
Thank you for joining us tonight. The question, you addressed part of it in your opening remarks, but what can we expect in terms of a balance, or which way do you tend to go between bringing, the board in line with kind of existing best practices that high functioning school boards out there engage in, versus, tailoring what the services you provide to the specific goals that the board is looking to achieve?
Well, the first step is actually the last thing you mentioned, which is what is it the board actually wants to achieve? In all too many cases, we find that the board has not been crystal clear in that. If that's the case, then our first task is to support the board in being clear about what it is you want to achieve. But if the board has already reached a state of clarity around that, then our job is to support the board at doing everything it can do to effectively drive performance system-wide relative to its goals. In that regard, it really heavily depends on what systems you already have in place. And part of our work is to help analyze that, help you identify where your strengths and weaknesses are, and then create a custom implementation timeline that describes what are the specific actions you all want to take over a 3, 6, 12, in some cases up to 24-month period to continuously improve your focus on accomplishing the goals that you've identified. And so in that regard, it's a mix of what you've described. Some of it is basic blocking and tackling. If you don't have that in place, then obviously we support you with that first, of identifying what is the vision of your community and how have you codified that into your goals. But if that's already in place, then it is a more customized look at what are the specific areas where you all need to grow and improve.
And just one more question. What is the, over the course of those 6, 12, 24 months, what's the intensity of the engagement between the board and yourself?
That varies, again, based on what are the things that you all want to have happen. If there are a lot of performance improvements that you all want to drive within your own governance systems, then we ramp up to match that level of intensity. Sometimes people are looking for something, just a quick refresher, and we're happy to come in on a one-off basis and update you all on what are things happening in the world of governance, what are practices that others are engaged in. But that's on the very light touch end. If what you want is really in-depth, where we shine most is bringing in teams to support coaching on the board level as well as the individual board member level, to support you rapidly being able to grow in the areas that you all identify that you want to grow in. And so again, in our most light touch school systems, that's us coming in and just providing an update on what are things that are happening around the country. For our most intensive engagements, it's us providing weekly coaching, one-on-one sessions with board members, as well as monthly coaching sessions with the board, as well as monthly and quarterly training and retreat sessions with the board. Again, it's entirely dependent on what it is that the board says it wants to do and over what timeline. Some boards want to move very quickly, some boards want to move more slowly.
And thank you. And just to conclude, I really look forward to the process, and I hope we all kind of jump in it, because I think we all agree it's very important work that we're doing. And as you, Chair Porter and I and Dr. Polo got a chance to meet with AJ before, and the experience that he and his team have dealing with boards all over the country over a number of years is really quite impressive. So I think that we could really benefit from learning from that experience. So thank you very much.
Other board members with questions or comments?
I'll jump.
Board
in.
Member Craig.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I'm unclear on where we are in this process. Is the chair and the superintendent and the vice chair recommending that we go through an extensive process with the council to evaluate the way that we're working together? Are we going to be discussing some type of a timeline for that? Could I get some more clarification perhaps from either of the three of you?
I'll quickly say that after our conversation with the Council of Great City Schools, that I called each board member and talked about this opportunity for us to work together as a board and to grow collectively as a board. First of all, to see if this is something that we wanted to do. I did not provide all the specifics that you have heard this evening, but everyone was agreeable to moving forward with this. And so now that they are ready to start the process, what they will do is we will be working with another board member. So before we wanted to share information, I asked if they would please come and talk tonight about the process and what we're going to do. There is no immediate timeline tonight. It depends on, if I've heard correctly, how quickly we want to move or how slowly we want to move, and really to look at what is it we hope to accomplish. So this is something that you said yes to, that you may not remember saying yes to. And just.
Oh, I remember.
Oh,
I'm
okie
just
dokie.
asking
Well, that's
for
good,
some-
but I just wanted to say that we didn't just put this on the table without talking with you first.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, may I?
Go ahead, AJ.
I would add on to that, that from our perspective, the next step, which for us is most often the first step, is to do one-on-one interviews with each of the board members, simply to get a perspective from each of you of where are you as a governing body and where do you want to be. Based on those interviews, we would put together a implementation, a synopsis of what we've heard, along with a set of recommendations. If you all are at that point interested in continuing, then we actually start to build out a timeline on what it would look like to accomplish all the things that you all shared in your interviews that you want to accomplish.
Other questions or comments? I thank you for being here. I'll let Dr. Polio close it out, but thank you for being here this evening. I look forward to moving forward with the Council of Great City Schools. And I would not have had the opportunity to ask about their services if we had not had those weekly calls. And some of you have sometimes reminded me to do better. So I thought that we could do better together. So that's why we're going to move forward with this. And I'll let Dr. Polio close it out. Dr. Polio.
Thank you, Chair Porter. We appreciate you, AJ, coming today and look forward to our work with you in the interviews and then bringing back the plan that you lay out for us in the timeline. So thank you for your presence here tonight.
Have a blessed evening.
Thank you. And as I said earlier, this does not require a vote. This is just an information item for discussion. So the next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. And I have not been asked to pull down any items this evening. So is there a motion to approve the consent calendar this evening? Motion by Ms. Duncan. Seconded by Board Member Craig. Okay, all those in favor of the consent calendar, please raise your hand. Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. That takes care of the consent calendar. And then we will move on. The next agenda item is our board planning calendar. Is there a motion to receive the board planning calendar? Are there any questions? But is there a motion to receive the planning calendar?
Marshall.
Board Member Marshall makes the motion and it's seconded by Dr. Chris. Thank you. No questions, no discussion. All those in favor to receive the planning calendar, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous. Are there any committee reports this evening from board members? All right, are there committee report or board reports? Okay, we'll move on to our board reports next. And since you raised your hand first, Dr. Shaw, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair Porter. I'm sorry, I think I jumped the gun. I just wanted to go on record as expressing my enthusiasm at all of the students who participated in the Justice Fest this past Saturday at the Kentucky Convention Center. It was absolutely outstanding. We have so many brilliant young people in this district that I just wish everybody in the entire city, matter of fact, the entire country could have heard their pitches for justice and their performances and their presentations. It was just outstanding. And so to Nari Clayton Taylor and to Matthew Kaufman, thank you for your impeccable leadership. It was great to be in the place Saturday to experience that great Justice Fest put on by our young people. Additionally, I would like to express kudos to Dr. Polio and his team, to DEP, and all of those who had a part in ensuring that the first class of teachers who were emerging from the Louisville Teacher Residency Program, that they graduated successfully. It was great to see those pictures and to hear all of the enthusiasm in the community about that program. So thank you.
Other board reports this evening? Okay, I will quickly echo the comments that Dr. Shul made about Justice Fest Saturday at the Kentucky International Convention Center. It's hard to tell you about what you haven't seen, but what we had an opportunity to see were students engaged and very willing to share their thoughts with us and plans that they have made collectively to see how so many schools have worked together to pull this off. We would not have been able to do it without the help of our district, Dr. Polio, Dr. Marshall, and all those that were engaged and involved with what was going on in the district, and to the sponsors that stood. I mean, it was an amazing presentation. And just to see students when we haven't really been able to see students for such a long period of time, I would like to thank everyone that made it possible. And I want to say a special thank you to Hannah Drake. If you have never heard Hannah Drake speak, you have missed a lot. And her words of motivation and words of guidance were very important and meaningful. So that's what I would like to say as a part of my board report this evening. Are there other comments or board reports? Ms. Duncan?
Just want to congratulate my grandson who is graduating as a valedictorian from Pleasure Ridge Park High School. I'm very excited to be able to attend that graduation with Mr. Marshall.
Okay, congratulations to all of our families that are sitting up here, that if you don't have a 12th grader, you might have somebody else that's taking a move from 5 to 6 or 8 to 9, whatever the case may be. So congratulations to everyone for this time of the year, celebration time. So moving on, before I do call for an adjournment, since we're busy congratulating our graduates, I wanted to have a couple of quotes to give you, share with you. And it says, the first one I want to talk about is from graduation speech at Howard University. And the speaker was Chadwick Boseman, who was the star of the movie, The Black Panther. and he was a graduate of Howard University. Some of his words that he said were, just because something works, it does not mean it cannot be improved. And in times of crisis, the wise build bridges while the foolish build barriers. And I'm saying this to our students as they're moving on in life. Another quote that I will say is, education is their passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. These are words for our students as they move forward. And another quote from Coach, it says, do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you will do. So to all of our graduates, congratulations to you. And to those that are moving, like I say, from elementary to middle and middle to high school, keep moving, don't give up, even when folks may tell you that you're not going to make it. What you do is you show them that you will. So thank you. At this season, while we're thanking everybody, I'd like to thank the board and the superintendent and your team for all that we have worked so tirelessly and so devotedly and so passionately as we are, as I have heard said, we're getting one more day closer to the end of where we are now. So at this time, that completes the board reports. And at this time, which happens to be 7:52, is there a motion to adjourn, please?
Marshall?
Board Member Marshall, seconded by Ms. Duncan. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Have a good evening and good graduation services the rest of the week. Thank you.